he just had this like country bumpkin kind of manner. Mm-hmm. And I thought, ugh, I'm gonna wipe the floor up with him. And he kicked my ass.
Wouldn't you love a backstage pass to candid discussions at the crossroads of motherhood, justice, community, entrepreneurship, mentoring, and success? You've got the Mighty Merp podcast. And part 3 in this series.
Like, I remember always like making fun of Jim Hurley, who, you know.
I know.
And Jim's retired now too, so we can talk about him. But Jim was a very good trial lawyer. He was very good. And Jim had this kind of like, always kind of like looked like he just walked in, had just jumped out of bed and put on whatever was at the bottom of his bed. And he had shoes with holes in the soles. And I always thought, is this an act? Or is he really that disheveled? And then I would see him out, and he would be dressed like polo shirts.
So was it an act?
It was absolutely an act. And that was the way he got people to be non-threatened by him and to accept him as an everyman.
Yeah, so I do think it's different for what men can present in court and women can present in court. I don't think a woman generally, I think there's exceptions and outliers for everything, can come across as like disheveled or frumpy or not on top of it in a courtroom and be effective to a jury. I think jurors are very judgmental, especially towards women. And from what I wear to my shoes, so right. I like really nice shoes. And I have, pink shoes and, vampire purplish maroon shoes. And I won't wear these things the first day or 2 or 3 of trial. Right. I wear black heels. I will wear the same shoes in black or navy for them to see that I like to wear heels and that I will dress very nicely. But I don't ever want someone in the jury box to think, who does she think she is?
Right, exactly.
And yes, and I love like the different styles, because what I say to young attorneys is everyone is you have to find your voice and your authenticity in a trial. Right. And I had a trial, I am going to throw out this name, with Mario Formico, who is still at the Atlanta County Prosecutor's Office, and he's now the chief of the Special Lit Unit, but I had a trial with him, and he is very animated in court. He is hands up and down and hands through his hair, and you could see him getting red at times. And it is part of his trial persona and experience. Yeah. And I loved watching it. I thought he was really effective in court. I thought it was entertaining for the jury. And I was thinking, he's so good.
Yeah.
But I thought, I can't do that. That's not my style.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And I couldn't pull it off with any authenticity.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the key. You have to be authentic to yourself. That's where you have to start, because you can't just say, oh, well, that worked for this lawyer. It might not work for you. It's not your personality.
Correct.
Right.
So was it hard going from a prosecutor job, which you had for a number of years, to switching to, I assume in private practice you did defense work, and then being a public defender? Because out of all my jobs that I've had since going to law school, and I was a public defender, I taught at Rowan University in their Law and Justice Department. I've been in private practice now for 13 plus years. In some ways, being a public defender was the hardest, even though the knowledge base, I mean, you're so entrenched with the law, you have so many cases, you probably, I think public defenders probably know more law because of where they are every day. And yet, the reputation of public defenders is that you don't know anything, right?
Well, the funny thing for me is From day one, when I was still in law school and had decided I wanted to be a criminal trial attorney, I wanted to be a public defender. And when I graduated from law school, my first job was as a judicial law clerk, which I think a lot of us, that was the first thing we did because it gave you exposure to a whole lot of things and you made contacts with a lot of people. But the job I really, really wanted was public defender, and I applied everywhere. I mean, not just in New Jersey. I applied from here to Maine on the East Coast in public defender's offices, and I just couldn't get, there wasn't, the timing wasn't right, and I just couldn't get that job. It wasn't until I was in private practice and I was doing a lot of pool work for the public defender's office, because by that time I had established myself in Cape May County. My wife was there, my children were there, my home was there. I didn't want to go anyplace else. But the Cape May County Public Defender's Office only has 5 lawyers in it. So you literally had to wait for somebody to retire or die to get in that office.
Or leave. They've had a few people leave. And I think they're at 7 now. I could be wrong on the numbers, but I think there might be 7 or so. Yeah.
I think when I first went, there were, I think 5 lawyers, two lawyers in 2 trial teams. And then the deputy, whoever the deputy was doing juvenile and et al. And then, of course, drug court came and you need a lawyer to do drug court. And so the office has gotten a little bit bigger. But I really had to wait for somebody to move on. And that was always my dream job. So was it harder? Not for me, because it was the job I wanted, and it was the job I loved. And I loved being a public defender. I loved everything about being a public defender, because when you were in the prosecutor's office, there was still this hierarchy of people above you and below you, and everybody's trying to get someplace. And you had more layers of people hands-on micromanaging you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't really get to make real decisions.
No.
And that was true when I was in Philly working. The district attorneys would say, I don't have the authority to make that decision. And it's true here, where as a public defender, when I was a public defender, as long as I could explain and justify my reason, and I was
never, first of all, being a public defender was great, because you're actually a state public defender, but Trenton doesn't even know where Cape May County is. They really don't. So they would, not only would they leave us alone, they really didn't even know what we were doing. And then you had your deputy in your office who was like, yeah, try your cases, do your thing, leave me alone. Don't bother me, And so that was great. You had complete autonomy and you had responsibility, and nobody was looking over your shoulder. And it was one of those jobs where I wasn't looking to go up anywhere. I didn't want to go anywhere. Hell, if you went up, you had to go to Trenton. It was the last place I wanted to go.
And it was before Zoom.
Yeah.
Since Zoom really is only the last
Zoom.
few years.
It was before Zoom.
Yeah. So that's funny. I loved being a public defender, but I will tell you, I don't know, also it was the beginning of my career. And when I was 26, you can imagine that I looked 16. And I'm not.
And we're a woman.
And I was a woman.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in a bragging way.
No.
I was in court with people my own age times, and the judge would say, Mr. Smith, is this your daughter? And it was the weirdest thing. But even when
I'm sure you had clients say, can I get a real lawyer here instead of this little Twinkie?
Yeah, aside from this child. So yeah. and even when I won trials, I had clients say to me, you did really good. You should think about going to law school. Yes.
Must say no one ever said that to me.
No one ever said that
No.
to you as a public defender. That's funny. So you retired in 2018.
Yeah. I got to the point where I had been doing it for 40 years, and I just didn't think I could do it anymore. And the biggest factor really to my saying that's it was technology. Mm-hmm. I grew up when I went to college and when I went to law school, I didn't know how to use a computer. I still don't know how to use a keyboard. I am completely techno stupid. When I was a young lawyer, I had a secretary and she took shorthand. And if she didn't take shorthand, we had dictaphones and little cassette tapes, and I would dictate what I wanted to, my brief or my letter, and I would hand it to my secretary, and she would come back with this document, and she would file it, and she would do all of the things that I didn't know how to do and still don't know how to do.
So e-courts was your enemy?
E-courts, I mean, even, so I'm a very visual person. Mm-hmm. I to this day, if I get a new script, I get a yellow highlighter and I highlight my lines, and I have a paper script. I can't do it on my phone or on a tablet like some of these young actors will do. I have to have a paper script, and that's how I learn my lines. During my practice, we had boxes of discovery with reports, and you would read the reports and you would highlight the reports, and you had physical things. And then by the time it was over, it was like, you didn't get any discovery. You know, first they would send it to you in a disc, and I have to figure out how to do that. And then it wasn't, then you didn't even get that.
Yeah, you had to get it on the portal and then download it.
The what? The portal? That sounds like voodoo. It's like the cloud. I still don't know what the cloud is. It's out there in the ether, and I have to like conjure it in order for it to appear in front of me. And then I was supposed to do all of that myself. I was supposed to type my own briefs and e-file them. And then, you know, even before the pandemic and you started doing Zoom everything, when we changed the bail system to, you know,
criminal justice reform in 2017.
Right. So we would all have duty where we had to do the bail hearings, or the detention hearings as they were called, I guess, and have to do them on a computer. And it's like, I think that was, I mean, I was ready, but I think that's really what it's
spam again. It's your girlfriend spam again.
She's very, very impatient. But that was but 40 years was enough. And I had always had a game plan. I always knew that I was not going to be one of those lawyers that died at their desk. I was not going to be one of those lawyers that just practiced forever and ever and ever and ever, because there was so much else I wanted to do, and I always had that dual career. So I always knew that when I did retire, I wasn't going to have to figure out what I was going to do next. I already knew what I was going to do next. I was just going to do more of it. So for me, the 40 years came at a point where I had a nice state pension between being a public defender, a prosecutor, and a law clerk. I had a nice pension. And I could afford to retire knowing that as a professional actor, I make money, but I don't have to make money.
Right.
And I don't have to worry like most young actors do, like, I got to get this job or else I can't pay rent. I can pay rent regardless whether I get a job or not, but.
Right. Yeah, so you declared you were 70, so I am almost 51. And it's interesting, the technology aspect of our jobs, because I don't have a huge problem with technology. I would say that my kids think that I'm a dinosaur when it comes to technology, but I do have a son at RIT and who's a computer science kid. And so there's, compared to him, I know nothing. But I still need a file. And when you talk about, highlighting your scripts, I need I can access the discovery and I can skim and read the discovery online. I have a whole digital system, which I think is amazing. But when I'm really sitting down to dig into a case and to see strengths and weaknesses and what motions I'm going to file.
Right. And when you try a case, do you have yourself a little trial book that you put together?
I not only have binders that I make of each exhibit for me, the prosecutor, and the witness stand, I also have a box of folders which each individual who's going to testify with each of their either reports, statements with my questions in it.
I love the fact that I think you're a little OCD with.
I'm a little OCD.
Thank you for listening in. Stay tuned for the next part in this conversation. Mighty Merp is available on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite apps and players. But the best way to experience the show is to visit mightymerp.com. That's mightymerp.com. This podcast is not a source of legal advice. No two legal cases are the same. Contact an attorney if you require legal assistance.